Hey, well, today I'm angry because the rules were changed and we were not even consulted on whether we agreed with these new rules. And I'm talking about the fact that we're basically living under permanent martial law these days. Now, we as a citizenry agreed and believe that in the case of a major disaster, an asteroid hitting the planet, an earthquake, for example, that these martial laws are just and reasonable. But we never imagined that authorities would seize upon them at their whim. I mean, we need to take another look at this and impose restrictions on when these martial laws can be imposed. Right now, it's at the whim of our leaders, be they governors or the president himself. Now, I'll illustrate the problem here, and we're going to talk about two main points. And first of all, let's look at the work of a researcher called Dr. Andrew Bostom, who is a cardiologist and epidemiology researcher. And he points out that he did research throughout the college system. I'll leave this up here for a while so you can read it. And his research shows that in the college system, there have been more than 11,000 cases of COVID-19 diagnosed so far with no hospitalizations. This seems to validate the point that younger people, even if they get COVID-19, are not at great risk of becoming very ill from it, just as with any other flu. Now, I'll grant you that this is an especially virulent flu, but in terms of a worldwide pandemic, it's not that virulent. It doesn't have the mortality rate that we saw 100 years in the Great Influenza of the early 1900s. And everybody is overreacting. We are allowing this. We have never agreed that the government can imprison us in our homes at will. We never agreed that you could be incarcerated without being convicted of a crime. And yet here we are. Not only the government, but our own citizens are eager to turn us in if we're outside without a mask. So let's focus first on this university. This is Northeastern University. And I'll remind you that Dr. Boston pointed out that despite over 11,000 infections, there wasn't a single hospitalization. Here's Northeastern deciding that 11 of their students, happen to be in their first year, should be expelled because they didn't practice social distancing. Not only that, but of course Northeastern is not going to be refunding their tuition, because why would they? They're an avaricious college and they only care about one thing, and it's not you getting a job. So we have evidence that college kids, in spite of being affected, are not getting sick, and yet we have the colleges acting as if Ebola is loose in the land. So how bad can things get? Well, let's look to Quebec, and I'll point out that the Canadians are considered the mild-mannered people of the Americas. Look what they're doing. This is from today, the 9th of September 2020, and you have Dr. Jacques Girard, who heads the Quebec City Public Health Authority, pointing out that there were people in a bar who were ordered to wait in the bar until their COVID-19 tests came back. They didn't. They went home. What was the result of that? They were dragged out of their homes and sent to an unnamed quarantine facility. No one knows where they are. They are being confined. They are in jail for 14 days. What was the crime? Not obeying the health authorities. Now, in the case of Ebola, you can understand that this kind of approach would be justifiable. I mean, obviously, if there's a deadly disease, you would expect your fellow citizens to undergo great hardship to make sure that nobody caught this disease. But it seems as if this disease is nothing more than a bad cold. And yet we are overreacting. We are acting as if the literal meteorite has hit the planet. It has not. This is a bad case of flu, a very bad case of flu. But compared to diseases that have swept the planet in the past, it is nothing. And yet look how we are reacting. We have allowed the government to basically declare martial law, and it's still ongoing. I mean, we are now in the 9th month of the year. It has been going on for about 7 months, and there's no end in sight. It's probably going to get worse as we all start getting fevers now, as we catch normal end of year, so wintertime flus. The disaster is not so much this illness that we've gone through. It is our reaction to the illness. First, we've completely destabilized the economy by pumping trillions of dollars into the banks. And secondly, we've taken all of our individual freedoms and the population hasn't said peep. I remember when China imposed draconian lockdowns in Wuhan, I turned to friends of mine and said, there's no way that Americans are going to be willing to endure this kind of forced lockdown. Well, we are enduring it, we have endured it, we're still enduring it, and things may very well get worse. Who's to say that the Quebec model doesn't come here? If they can tell us you have to stay in your house, if you wear a mask and you go out, you can go to jail, how much longer is it before we're forcibly dragged off to quarantine? It's now. It might happen now. We need to rethink the compact between government and citizenry. Martial law is appropriate. It is a valid stance for a government to take in a time of great disaster. But we need to decide when that disaster is, not power-hungry governors, presidents, or whoever else might be in power. This is a wake-up call to all of us. Please, please, please pay attention and wake up.